everybody, hello, Unbroke Women Tribe. This is the first video that I decided to do reviewing money books. So I had this idea sometime last week that maybe about once a month I would do a review of a money or business book or a business concept that I read and learned from in a book. So let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you're watching this. And I hope that if you're watching live, you say hi so I can say hi back. And if you are watching the replay, please let me know in the comments. And I would really love to hear what's the one thing that you took out of it. If you want to take notes, feel free to do so. If you want to rewatch it, definitely feel free to do so. I will pin this at the top of the page so it's easy to find in the group, and it will be there for a while. But my intention in the long run is to do at least one book a month that is either about business or about money. So I hope more of you will join in as time passes, and I hope you let me know what you think. Hello! So we're talking about the psychology of money today. And as you see, I put tons of sticky notes because there are a lot of interesting things. And I have a thing about books. I really like them to be nice and neat and not bent and definitely not highlighted or written on. So I wanted to make sure I cover some of the points that I found really interesting. And there were a lot of them in this book. So that's why I put a lot of sticky notes to make sure that I touch the points that I want to share with you guys. And my goal today is to finish this live in about 30 minutes or so. So that way you have the patience to listen to the whole thing. And if I don't finish the book in that time, then most likely I would do another live where I can continue the review. So I can go over the rest of the chapters that I don't cover. I would say that the book is a really easy read, so even if you're intimidated by money, even if you feel uncomfortable thinking about it or talking about it, I would definitely suggest that you pick up the book. It's called The Psychology of Money, and it's not technical. The actual bottom line of the book, the whole premise, is that we make decisions based on how we feel and based on our beliefs and our experiences and the circumstances that we grew up in. And that even though it's being taught and it's being said that money is very technical and that the decisions can be very rational, most of us are not rational when it comes to money, which is why we make mistakes. We're not crazy, we just make mistakes, and we just get influenced by things that we grew up with or things that were taught to us or the times that we grew up in. So, hi Diana. So do read the book. It will make you maybe feel better about some decisions that you may be regretting about your money. So with that said, let's talk about the psychology of money. And I will start by saying that the author, one of the first statements that he makes is that the money decisions that we make are not based in rational thoughts. They're not based in the charts and the technical stuff that is available all over the internet. They're based more on soft skill, which he calls the psychology of money. And it's not science when it comes to money, it's just psychology. It's beliefs, it's feelings, it's things that are around us, circumstances that we grew up in. Alright, now the way the book is structured, it has 20 chapters and each of them are a lesson. And during the book, he shares a lot of different stories about people that either made a lot of money or lost a lot of money. So I think you will find it entertaining, and I think you will find that you can learn a lot of lessons from it. One of my favorite quotes about money is right in the beginning of the book, and he says, money is everywhere. It affects all of us and confuses most of us. That is so true. And a lot of the women that I work with are intimidated by even talking about money. They get uncomfortable thinking about money decisions. They don't like planning. They just want to keep it or try to kind of hope for the best and pray and not really do a whole lot. So if that's your case, no judgment here. Read the book, it will make you feel better. The first story that Morgan shares is about Ronald and Richard. And Ronald was a janitor, and he became very well known, made national news with a donation upon his death. When he was 92 years old when he died. And right now the year is escaping me. It's not that long ago. It was either in the 90s or in 2000s. I don't know. It wasn't that long ago. And he became famous because he donated over $1 million to charity when he died, even though he was a janitor. And the point of that story is that he didn't save a whole lot of money, but he did put a lot of time in it. So he was disciplined in saving. He had a modest life, even though he did own his own house. And he ended up leaving 2 charities over $1 million. On the opposite end is Richard, who made a whole lot of money. He was a hedge fund manager, and he spent a lot of money in luxury stuff that he couldn't sustain because we all know what happened in 2008 when everything crashed and he lost everything that he had, literally for pennies on the dollar. So just keep that in mind. And we'll talk about that as we go through the book because there are a lot of stories like that. Lesson number 1, chapter 1. Oops, no one is crazy. So whatever decisions you make, don't feel bad. You're not crazy. Your decisions are made not on what happens around you, but how you feel about what happens around you. So when you listen to the news, when you read the news, you don't make the decision because the news says something. You make the decision because that particular news does something to you, makes you feel a certain way, creates certain feelings, or triggers you in some way, and that's how you make the money decisions. All right, so our circumstances lead to our beliefs, and that's the point of this. So wherever we grew up, we decided something about money. The people that grew up during, and of course also when we grew up, not just the where, but the when as well. People that grew up during Depression had certain feelings about money. People that grew up when the inflation went really high had certain feelings about saving and seeing their savings not really keeping up with inflation. People that grew up when inflation wasn't really happening, like in the 90s, and especially in the early 2000s, they like to save because they know that it's going to grow. So the circumstances around us as we're growing up influence what we decide to do with the money. And there's a story about the lottery and how people feel that lottery is their only hope. And mostly it's the poor people because they believe that something is going to come as a big chunk of money, right? Lottery winnings. And that's going to solve all their problems. When in fact, the people that made a whole lot of money, famous investors like Warren Buffett and Jack Bogle from Vanguard, what they had in their favor wasn't a whole lot of money to begin with, was saving constantly and holding on to their investments. So the hope says one thing, but the reality says something else. All right, let's see. Lesson number 2, luck and risk. This chapter actually has the story of Bill Gates and how he started Microsoft and how there was a little bit of luck involved because he actually was in one of the very few high schools that had a computer back in the day when computers weren't so all over the place. So how that access influenced his whole life. So again, circumstances trigger something in us, whether it's a belief, whether it's an action, whether it's a feeling that later influences our life. And the subtitle of lesson number 2 is another favorite quote of mine: nothing as good or as bad as it seems. So if you think that things are going bad, no worries. It's not as bad as you think. I know your problems are the worst because they're yours, but in fact, they're not as bad as you think they are. And also keep in mind, take the good with a grain of salt as well, because it's not as good as you think. All right, so 3 people went to the same high school and were friends: Bill Gates, Paul Allen, and Kent Evans. All of them worked on computers, all of them learned how to program, and they would have been amazing partners, and probably Microsoft would have been the story of 3 people and not just 2 people. Except risk had a say in this. And Kent Evans actually died very young in an accident, I believe, on the mountain. So that's why we have to be careful what kind of risks we take on, and not just in life, but also with money, right? How much are you willing to lose to go for that possible gain? All right. In lesson number 2, the author says to be careful who you praise and admire, and be careful who you look down upon and wish to avoid becoming. So with that, just keep in mind that when you're reading or learning from something that somebody does, you want to know the background story. You want to know how they got there. It's great, okay, they made lots of money, maybe you want to be like them. But is that a path that you want to walk on or not? Okay. And Morgan here says to focus less on specific individuals and case studies and more on broad patterns. So that's something that's good to keep in mind when it comes to money as well. Don't think about just one instant or one stock or one way of doing things when there are multiples. Look at the patterns. Look at how the broad image looks. Chapter number 3, never enough. Are we all familiar with that, huh? So, never enough is a very interesting chapter. It talks about John Bogle, or Jack Bogle, Bogle as he was known, and how he talks about when you have a lot, you have to at some point feel it's enough. And then the chapter has some stories of people that got greedy, wanted more, and ended up losing it all. So if you read this book, you'll find out some interesting stories about how the mighty can fall. Okay? The higher they go, the harder they fall, right? There's a saying that says that. Okay. In chapter 3, he talks about the hardest financial skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving. So that's where you say, okay, this is where I want to go, and I'm going to stop pushing it over there and feeling unhappy until I get there. So when it's here, be happy you achieved it. I'm not saying don't set goals, God forbid. Of course, set the next goal. But make sure you're okay here. Don't do the here from here because of greed. Be okay with it. Be happy with it. And strive for more, because the more you have, the better you can do, the more people you can help, the more influence you can have, and the more good you can do with it. But don't do it out of greed. So make sure you stay within your values, stay within your happy place, right? Keep your values in check and make sure you don't do it out of greed. The biggest problem that we have in today's society, especially with social media that gives us access to pretty much anybody and everybody, is keeping up with the Kardashians now, right? It used to be the Joneses. So when you see somebody doing really well and you want to do just that well, sometimes it may not match your values, it may not match your lifestyle, it may not match your goals. So don't let yourself be influenced by what other people achieve, because they may not be on the same path as you are. And keep in mind that enough doesn't mean little. So when you have enough, it means you're comfortable. It means that you have a choice. It doesn't mean you shouldn't get more, because, like I said, with more comes more good. But it just means that the more that you don't get because of greed. You don't get because you want to have what the neighbor has down the street or what a celebrity has in social media. You get the more because you can do more. And there are many things that are never worth risking, no matter the potential gain. So throughout the book, there's a lesson that I always teach my clients, to think about what would not let you sleep at night. What will keep you awake? Because if you do that thing, you will have that problem. So if losing money keeps you up at night, if the potential of losing money keeps you up at night, if your stock or 401k or any other investment gives you a stirring inside that doesn't let you rest and that keeps you up at night, then don't do it. It's not for you. There are plenty of options out there that will not stir that inside. So when you make money decisions, it has to be based on what you are comfortable with, what feels good for you. Okay? All right. Chapter number 4, confounding the compounding. Now, we all heard of compound interest, and we all know it's considered the eighth wonder, and we know that the longer money sits somewhere and the interest keeps accumulating, the bigger it gets, because interest begets interest. Well, in chapter 4, the author shares the story of Warren Buffett, and he talks about how everybody praises Warren Buffett for being such a savvy investor, and I'm not taking anything away, and he's not taking anything away from that. But the point of the story is that one thing that a lot of people neglect when they look at what Warren Buffett did is the fact that he did it over a long period of time. Almost 3 quarters of a century. So when you have time on your side, compound interest will work miracles. So as long as you find somewhere to put your money where it gets interest, the longer you're patient and leave it there, the more the compound interest will work in your favor. And the analogy for this compound interest, the best way to explain it is when the author talks about climate, right? We all talk about the ice age and how in between 2 ice ages, the earth is inhabitable and warm and all that. And then stuff happens and the next ice age comes on. So for many years, the belief was that the longer the winters, the closer the ice age will get. Well, there was a scientist that figured out that it's not the winters that triggered the coming of the next ice age, is the summers, because when they are shorter, they don't melt the ice, and the ice keeps accumulating year over year, right? The snow in certain places stays on, so then new snow falls on top of it. Well, compound interest works in a similar way. If you leave the money there, it keeps accumulating, right? So that's the best analogy that you can have to just kind of maybe tell you not to touch your money if you put it somewhere. Now, I apologize, I forgot to do this disclaimer at the beginning. This is not a investment advice class. It's nowhere that I'm telling you to put your money. It's no generally speaking you should do this, that, and the other, because there is no generally speaking when it comes to your money. Everybody has individual situations. Everybody has personal or family situations. Everybody has beliefs, and triggers and feelings and circumstances, and they're different from the person next door, and they're different from the person across the room. So this is not an advice for you on what to do with your money. This just tells you a few things to take into account when you make those money decisions. Okay. Lesson number 5. Getting wealthy versus staying wealthy. All right. A lot of people aim to get wealthy, which is great. And if you're not wealthy already, obviously that should be your first goal. But the bigger goal is staying wealthy, and that is always harder. And when you aim for that, keep in mind that good investing is not necessarily about making good decisions. It's about consistently not screwing up. So when you want your money to grow, you don't necessarily have to chase the biggest return, which is a mistake that a lot of people make. You have to be consistent, and you have to let it work for you. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about keeping your money and not just accumulating the money. And there's a soccer coach from way back in my younger days that said that it's easier to get to the top than it is to maintain yourself at the top. Okay? The same exact thing works for money, the same exact principle. Because it's easier to accumulate the money than it is to keep it. For a few reasons. Like the stories in here prove, a lot of people get greedy, they want more, risk it, and then lose it all. Also, another issue that comes up is that when you don't plan it right, then it doesn't stay no matter how much you bring in, right? It's like if you have a bucket that has a couple of holes in it and you're trying to carry water with it, you're not going to be able to keep the water because of the holes. So you have to make sure that your bucket doesn't have any holes when you're trying to accumulate money. Another analogy for the compounding of interest is growing oak trees. When you plant an oak tree, it grows very little from one day to the other, or from 1 week, or from 1 month to the other. But over the years, you see the growth. The same is with compound interest. When it's a little bit of an acorn, it's not going to be a whole lot. When it's a little sapling, you can see it better. But when it's an oak tree, it becomes really huge. So if you let it sit there and don't disturb it long enough, it will grow into that oak tree. So that's another thing to keep in mind and maybe motivate you to keep the money and make sure that you don't keep touching it. You don't bother that compound interest from accumulating. All right. Planning is important, but the most important part of every plan is to plan on the plan, not going according to plan. I know that's a mouthful, but it's also very important to keep in mind that no matter how good your plan is, there's a chance something is going to happen that's going to mess it up. So be prepared to have something that is a fail-safe, to have a backup plan, to have something that will help you sleep at night and not lose sleep over losing money because of bad decisions. All right, so progress doesn't necessarily look like a line going constantly up, right? When we think about the market over the last 100 years, we think, okay, it started here and now it's here, but it didn't grow straight. It went like this, even though it kept going up, right? It had bumps in the road. Well, every progress is going to look like that. It's not going to be a linear up line. It's going to be up and down, even though gradually it will be up. When you invest, keep in mind, tails, you win, right? So you're going to have different investments. Your money is going to be in different buckets, which is what everybody suggests, right? Don't put all your eggs in one basket. There's a reason for that saying. Well, when you do that, not everything's going to be great, but there will be some great ones that will make up for the ones that aren't great. And there are a few principles that you may be familiar with. The outliers, right? Something that's out there in the left field is the best thing, and that's going to bring you more money than everything else that's over here. The 80-20 principle, right? 20% of your efforts will generate 80% of your results. The same thing, 20% of your investments will generate 80% of your profits. So keep that in mind. Don't stress over this particular investment or this particular investment, because overall, if you put your money in different buckets, something will happen that will make up for something else that's not happening the way that you think it should. All right. And keep in mind that if you have your money in investments that automatically disperse it in different buckets, then all of that job is done for you. And again, this is not investment advice. If you want that, we can chat one-on-one. This is just an idea for you to keep in mind when you make those decisions. All right, step number 7, or lesson number 7, freedom. Well, the most important revenue that you get from money is not necessarily money. So the best way to measure your return on investment is the freedom that you get from it, right? When you want to do something and the money that you have allows you to do that something, then that's the freedom. That's the real return on your investment. It's not about how much money you get, but it's about what that money allows you to do that you want to do. Hey, Joy. So some returns on your money investments are not measured by money, by numbers, by technical things. They're measured by things that you feel. Because when you can do what you want to do and you're free, then whatever you had to do to achieve that was worth it. If you couldn't do this one thing because you wanted to do this other thing, once you can do this other thing, then it was worth giving up the lesser thing, right? So keep in mind that money freedom leads to time freedom, and that is the best return on investment. All right, man in a car paradox. Love this lesson. A lot of us want to have more money because we want nicer things, and there's nothing wrong with wanting nicer things. It's good to be comfortable. It's good to feel good. It's good to feel that we are taking care of ourselves and we can pamper ourselves, or we have the best of something. And if that something is a luxury car or a really nice mansion, that's fine. If that is for you, if that makes you feel like $1 million, then you should get that. Just don't be motivated by the fact that when you have that nice car or that nice house, people are going to respect you more, or they're going to look at you with more respect, maybe a little bit of envy, maybe a little bit of jealousy, or really look up to you. Because when you drive down the street in a nice Lamborghini and people turn their head, they look at the Lamborghini, they don't care who's driving it. And you may think that they're looking at you, oh, look at that amazing looking woman getting out of it. They don't care. What they care about is, ooh, that Lamborghini would look so good on me. I would be so cool behind that wheel. That's what people are thinking. So don't be motivated by what others may think because you're driving that nice car. If you want the nice car, well, that should be your goal. But do it because you want the nice car, not because you want people to look at you in the nice car, because they're not going to look at you. They will look at the nice car, but not at you. Wealth is what you don't see, right? So the nice car is nice, but if you spend money to show people how much money you have, that's the fastest way to have less money. So wealth is something that is for you, something that you enjoy, and not something that other people can see on you, right? It's the freedom to do what you want, when you want, with whomever you want. So keep that in mind. Save money. And that's lesson number 10. And we're getting close to the half an hour, so I will stop after lesson 10 because that will be half of the book. And I will do the second part of it. I'll let you know. Probably tomorrow, but I don't know what time yet. Probably a little bit later so people can get out of work and hopefully join us. All right. So when you want to have more money, there's one thing that you control 100%. You can't control what the market does. You can't control whatever is happening in the world, whatever the circumstances are, but you can control one thing. Are you saving? Are you putting money away? Because the more money you put away, the more money you have. All right. So the first idea is simple but easy to overlook. Building wealth has little to do with your income and investment returns, and a lot to do with how much you save. Right? So the more you save, the more it accumulates. Of course, like I said, you don't want to throw it out the window, so still be careful where you put it, but it still matters how much you put. And very important to keep in mind when you're thinking about you want to be wealthy, when you're thinking about I want to have a whole lot of money, wealth is relative and it depends on what you want to use it for. So it's not about a number. Okay, a lot of people say I want $1 million. $1 million is just this cool idea, it sounds good, whatever. A lot of people don't really need $1 million to be free, to have that freedom to do what they want. But they just think $1 million sounds cool, so they want to shoot for it. And a lot of people also can't use $1 million, or it's not enough to have $1 million because they want to do all of these things that take a lot of money. So don't be stuck in a number just because it's the fashionable thing. Wealth is relative to what makes you feel free, when you can do what you want to do. Right? Past a certain level of income, what you need is just what sits below your ego. Let that sink in. Okay? So, you control how much you save, and you control what you want to do with it once you save it. Right? So when you set your goals, just make sure your goals represent you and not whatever is in the news, whatever is in social media, whatever the neighbors down the street have. Okay, and keep in mind, you don't need a specific reason to save. You can just save because ultimately it will lead to freedom. And freedom can be your reason. All right. Lesson 11 is reasonable to rational. And we're going to talk about that and the other 10 lessons, all the 10 lessons, that and the other 9 lessons tomorrow. So stay tuned, come join me. Maybe more of you will come. Hopefully some of you will watch the replay before then. I look forward to seeing in the comments what's the one thing that you learned from the first half of the book. Let me know what you think. Let me know if something triggers inside you, or if something gives you an aha moment, or if something validates a principle that you've been guiding yourself by. Look forward to hearing from you. Let me know if you're watching the replay. Put hashtag replay and let me know you watched the replay. For those of you that came on today, thank you for joining me. And I look forward to seeing your comments in the Unbroke Women group. And also, if you feel that this was valuable, if you feel you're learning something, please bring a friend. Have her come join us and have her learn too, so we can impact the communities together. Because together we will reach more people, we will be able to change more lives, and we will be able to do better for ourselves and for our loved ones. Thank you so much. See you ladies tomorrow.